Appears we have a quorum, so we're going to call this meeting to order. Mr. Rivers, will you start us with invocation?
Let us pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we meet here tonight to conduct the business of Granville County Schools. Please inspire us to make the best decisions to further the work of educating the children of our communities. Help us to understand how to change the things that need changing, to accept the things we cannot change, and provide us the wisdom to know the difference. Help us to always respect the opinions of others and to place the best interests of our students above all else. All this we ask in your most precious name. Amen.
Would you join me for the pledge? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everybody this evening. I hope you enjoyed the reception outside. We're definitely thankful for Mr. Peace and for us to be able to celebrate for him. I do want to remind you, with us being here, there's a little technology that are differences. They wanted to remind us, unless you want to pass a mic, you have to talk loud. And I know how much you enjoy passing a mic. So, but also, if you are going to view things, if Stan puts it up, it'll be back here behind me. So just keep those in mind. So as we move along in our agenda, do you want to make adjustments to the agenda now?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. There are several adjustments to the agenda this evening, board members, if you will. There will be no minutes this evening to be approved. As you probably noticed in board docs, there were no minutes attached. We will bring those at a later date. Also, if you go to 9.02, which is the last item on your agenda this evening, we will not conduct business for 9.02. Facilities conversation. Item 1 was the Crescent Drive property. And item 2 was our remaining school reorg study. We will do neither of those this particular evening. That was 9.02. That will be removed from the agenda this evening. In addition, just because we have another order of business and due to the sake of time tonight, we want to make sure to get through closed session. We have some items for attorney-client privilege and we have some personnel items. I would like to ask Mr. Chair if we may move closed session right after our important audit update tonight. So once we get through the audit this evening, may we please go into closed session. Those are the adjustments to the agenda tonight. The district audit is 8.01. 8.01. I'm asking if we may then go into closed session.
Okay. Any other adjustments to the agenda? Thank you, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you.
All right, so moving next on to our consent items. You see those listed there. Are there any questions about those consent items before we move to approve those?
Motion to approve.
I have one quick question on the impaired driving. We did make the change, I noticed.
It's not on consent. It's further down.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
All right, so I have a motion by Dr. Houlihan and a second by Danny Udy. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those approve? I'm sorry, all those that disagree. Motion passes. All right, and so Dr. Winborn, you said there was no public comment?
No, sir.
All right. Madam Superintendent, your report?
Yes, sir. I have a brief report this evening. Happy New Year to everyone. Your mats this evening happen to be part of an additional communication and sharing we'd like to share with our board this year. So Happy New Year. Your mats tonight are courtesy of Phoenix Academy. If you recall, last year we began an arts program at Phoenix Academy. So each of you have a mat to take home with you tonight. They're all different and the child's name is on the back of the mat. You also have at your seat this evening from our arts program gumball machine ornaments, and these were made by students at South Granville High School. So compliments of South Granville this evening and Phoenix Academy. I would also like to welcome everyone with us, joining us tonight, to the 2020 school year and a new decade of learning for the children in our community. We began the year with a focus on literacy work. And if you recall, our theme was Vision 2020. And ladies and gentlemen, we are going to continue our efforts. These efforts were based on reading, language acquisition, reading comprehension, and vocabulary. We are still encouraging everyone in our community to join us as we work to move the academic needle this year. I would like to take this opportunity to personally congratulate Mr. Leonard Peace on his 30 years of service to the Granville County Public School System and to the state of North Carolina, which we just had the privilege of celebrating earlier tonight. Please do not forget that high school exams are coming soon. Please encourage all high school students in end-of-course exams to study, prepare for their assessments, get a good night's rest, and eat breakfast prior to taking their exams. Students, we are pulling for each of you. If you have questions, please ask those over the course of the next week or so. Tonight, I would like to thank Vance Granville Community College for helping us start our new partnership right here on the campus of Mary Potter. And this partnership helps us offer courses in our community for those who are interested in earning their diploma. This is part of the work our board has been exploring with the Mary Potter design team as it relates to keeping Mary Potter viable in this community. Free classes are being offered beginning January 6th, tonight, on our campus. We are pleased that this facility is being used in a variety of ways as promised. I could not end tonight's comments without sharing the wonderful district grant news we have secured for the district recently. What a wonderful way to start 2020. We are definitely on the move for our students. Academically, our data rooms are progressing. And now I'm proud to announce that we've been working and have received the following school safety grant awards in the following amounts. We've received a grant worth $175,000 for school safety equipment, and these funds will be used to improve the intercom and safety alert systems in our schools. We've also received a Project Arrow grant, which you have just approved on our consent agenda, and this totals $200,000. $100,000 of these monies will be used or will be set aside for students in crisis and the services needed there, and the other $100,000 will be used for school safety and crisis services for students and staff. We began this work last year and are expanding to other campuses this year. This is phenomenal, and we are pleased that we were able to get this money again this year. Finally, tonight, I would like to thank our community partner, Olive Grove Missionary Baptist Church of Oxford, North Carolina, for the wonderful donations made to our Phoenix Academy. Granville County Public Schools is on the move. This concludes my report.
Madam Superintendent. All right, do we have reports from other board members?
I had a couple of things. I'll go quickly because I know we're on a tight schedule. First off, I hope all of the board members were able to read Ms. McGee's handout regarding teaching physics in our high schools. It was very, very informative. This was passed out in November when she, at the central office during public comments. She's a Webb graduate,
Yeah. Great.
Notre Dame graduate, and Johns Hopkins graduate school graduate.
That's right, yeah.
Physics major. This handout, the 8 reasons why every college-bound student should take physics, is very, very important. Some of the things it mentions, physics classes polish the skills needed to do well on the SAT test. I invite you all to read that paragraph. Very informative about how physics helps students, high school physics helps students do better on the SAT classes. College recruiters recognize the value of physics classes. It is important on your resume and your listing of transcript when you apply to college. The job market for those skilled in physics is strong, and just to read this briefly, it says engineers or applied physicists comprise the second largest profession in America, second only to teaching, with about 1.4 million members. By comparison, there are about 500,000 medical doctors and only around 100,000 biologists. However, even medical doctors and biologists have to take college-level physics courses. Knowledge of physics is a prerequisite for many forms of professional employment. With that in mind, and also I'd like to reemphasize the school improvement plan, we all remember that South Granville High School, 120 students expressed an interest in taking AP Physics. I understand, I know that we like to have a certain minimum number of students to offer a course. In this case, I would like for the board to get a sense and to express a sense of that we would like to see whatever can be done to start recruiting students now for next year and start looking at either dual certified teachers who may be chemistry and physics teachers or whatever it takes so that we can start offering physics again in our high schools. And thank you for that consideration. The next item was I would like to see if we could have the two individuals, Mr. Herndon and Camp Go, who actually went to the instructional coach training at Henderson Collegiate, if it's possible to have them just briefly talk to us maybe January 21st or February about what they learned. And one of the reasons I'm so interested in this is because looking over the literature of the Kagan program, I see a lot of similarities. And I would just like to know if they gleaned anything from the training for Henderson Collegiate's instructional coaches that might have some applicability to what we're looking at with and other options. So I'd like to make that request. And finally, and this is something I've talked to the board chair about, to offer it here during board member comments is going to be a motion. We're all aware of what's going on tonight with the Toller lease, potential lease and all that. I'm sure probably all of us in board docs read Mr. Schwanner's letter. It is obviously now it's in writing that they are planning to open up a school there, an elementary school. I can only imagine that that elementary school could easily morph into a K through 8, possibly K through 12 in the future. So right now, if my figures are correct, we lost about 40 students or so after we closed totally this year. We likely could lose 100 more if they open a school there next year. If it becomes a full-fledged elementary school, or possibly even a K through 8, we're looking at potentially 300-400 plus students we could lose in the next, say, 5 years. That's about $3.5 million a year we would lose in local and state funding. The motion I'd like to make is not a binding motion. It's simply that, and it would not affect what we're going to do tonight. It's simply that the board discuss the possibility of reopening Toller. I know it could be dead on arrival, it may not be feasible. I think, though, with the changing landscape, with the fact that it is obvious now, there's no doubt about it, that Oxford Prep is going to open a school up there. I think we need to at least look at what it would take, what it would cost, how feasible it is for us to reopen that school if this board does not want to lose those students. Now, if we're comfortable with that, I think a school being up there is good for that community. And if it's a charter school, it's going to be good for that community. That will not be good for Granville County schools financially. So the motion I'd like to offer is simply non-binding, but simply non-binding as far as the sale or the rent. But simply that this board discuss the feasibility in the next several weeks. We have to move sort of fast in the next several weeks about reopening Toller next school year. And again, I have no prejudgment. We may get information, we know about the septic tank issues, we may get information that's just not viable. But I think we'd be remiss in not at least discussing it with an open mind. So therefore, Mr. Chair, I would offer a motion that the board discuss the possibility of reopening Joe Toller Elementary School next school year.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Rivers. Do we have a second for that to open discussion? All right, seeing none, here's the motion fails. All right, any further reports? Anything further, Mr. Rivers?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
All right. Any other board members?
Excuse me. Yes, I'd just like to thank the board and all of those that was had a hand in my recognition for my few years of service on this board. Just want to thank everybody.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your service.
Absolutely. All right. Any other board members? All right. I have a few items as the board chair to give you an update. I do want to remind you, you saw an email about our invitation to the Chamber of Commerce banquet at Advanced Granville, which is January 27th. I believe we have one seat remaining. If you'd like to attend that, please let Ms. Penaway know as soon as possible to go and be a part of that and show our support to the Chamber there. As we begin a new year, there are a few items that I want to do as a couple housekeeping items. There on board docs, you saw that there was a board policy 2120 uploaded for you to be able to read. We as a board are required annually to adopt and sign an ethics statement as a board. And I've asked Ms. Petaway to retrieve that statement that we've used in our policy, and that statement's available here tonight for us as a board to sign. One of the things that this came up from was we do have two board members that have come on board since the last time we signed this, Mr. Rivers and Ms. Allred, and so we wanted to make sure that they had the opportunity to sign that. So if there's no objections, and I've checked with the attorney, we actually don't need to take action on this, just as you see fit to agree. If you'll sign that statement here on the table before you leave, and we can pass it around tonight. At our January work session and February board meeting, we will discuss a few changes in the way we operate as a board. Mr. Peace made a suggestion in our December meeting that I believe is important for we as a board to start looking at how we are doing as far as our professional development as a board. At the January work session, we're going to hold a discussion regarding the possibility of our board participating in master board training. We've actually already taken one course in this already in superintendent evaluation. So one way you can show your acceptance of Mr. Peace's work in our state is to come with some ideas of how we can do this as a board come January. His request when he made that mention in December. We had made the comment, our delegation that goes to the annual meeting in November would love to have our board recognized for their training efforts. And so that's something that we'll come together at the January work session to be able to discuss, and we'll get you some information ahead of time for that. Also, we've talked a couple times about several ongoing board procedures. Often we find ourselves spending valuable time discussing routine matters and how to handle them. For example, filling an unexpired term, or how we request data or contact the staff and our attorney. Dr. Houlihan began some of this work in this area last year, and so I'm asking him to assist me to put some of these items in writing to bring you at the February board meeting. So if you have any ideas or topics that you'd like to include or areas to address, feel free to contact one of us before February. So basically your homework from leaving here is to remember those things that we ongoing spend a lot of routine time talking about routine items, and be able to kind of bring that up so that we can work on that as a board. I'd like to thank the staff and those involved in setting up our board meeting here tonight at Mary Potter. It was especially appropriate to celebrate Mr. Peace's 30th anniversary here tonight due to his connection of being a graduate here at Mary Potter. It's also exciting, as the superintendent told us, that tonight begins a new chapter of Advanced Granville. So what we're seeing is the fruition of something we put in place as a board over a year ago. And so I'd like to thank and congratulate those involved in making this happen according to our commitment made to this Mary Potter community. Another piece is our invocation and our pledge. In an effort to make sure everyone's given the same opportunity, I'll be offering each member the opportunity to offer the invocation and lead in the Pledge of Allegiance. We've taken the liberty to make a schedule, and kind of the way we want to do that is we would start with District 1 and rotate with the invocation. We would start with District 2 and rotate with the pledge. If you do not feel comfortable doing that, then you're more than welcome to let me know that before a board meeting. One of the reasons this came up is routinely I was the one to offer the invocation. And personally, I just do not feel that's a good optic for the board chair to do that every time. So we'll give you a schedule to look at that. And again, if you do not feel comfortable, by all means, let us know that, and we'll have someone else do that. Does that seem to be a fair consensus from the board? All right. In my preparation for this meeting and speaking with some of our stakeholders, I've developed 3 things that I want us to keep in the forefront as we meet for the rest of this year. We exist as a board to serve the children of Granville County and to educate them, and all of our decisions should keep that as the main focus. At the end of our discussions and actions, we should have any consensus direction for our staff to be clearly restated and entered into the minutes to avoid confusion and misunderstandings. Oftentimes, our staff are put in the situation of interpreting what they thought we said. And so we want to make sure that we are giving them clear direction so that they know that we're supporting what we're having them to do. I want to remind everybody that the purpose of this board and their role is to be a positive role model for Granville County Schools. And that we should thank our presenters and those involved in this meeting. But the biggest thing is to remember that as we're a positive role model, that we're all on the same team. We should be the biggest cheerleaders and champions for Granville County Schools. And so I want to make that commitment to you as the chair, but I also want you to make that commitment as well as we go out to make these decisions, to do this for the best interest of children, but also to be that cheerleader for Granville County Schools. Because we have over 1,000 adults and over 7,000 children that are looking at us every time we interact as a board to know how to act. And I wasn't going to add this in here, but I saw a very distressing video last night that come across of some of our children that just were not behaving appropriately in a local establishment. And what I gained out of that, and what I gained out of talking to someone today is if we are positive role models, maybe our children can act positively. So we need to keep that in mind. So I appreciate again the opportunity to serve you in this way. I want to remind you our January work session is January 21st. It's a Tuesday afternoon at West Oxford. I have been to West Oxford twice now for a meeting that didn't exist, so I'm excited to be there for one that does. Keep in mind at January that we're going to discuss training for the board, but also our superintendent's told us that we're going to talk about Restart and the RTI school program, and we also are working to have DPI come here and explain to us about Northern Granville and the ISD information we got. So I want to just make sure that you, if you can be here, be available to be there for that information. Do you have any questions for me before we move to our next item? Yes, sir.
When are we actually going to open up for the board position?
We're going to talk about that next. That's our next action item.
I was thinking you were talking about that earlier.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to piggyback off of one of the things that you said about being a cheerleader for our schools. I want to commend Dr. Winborn for putting such good, positive PR out there about what good things our kids are doing, because I think that often goes under the radar, and that brings it up to the front. And I think you're doing a really good job of making sure that the parents and the citizens know good things that our students are doing. Thank you.
We appreciate what you do.
It's a team effort.
All right. If there's no more questions, we will move on to our next item on the agenda is to discuss about filling the District 5 seats. If you look in your folders, you have some information there. Essentially what we did is we took the process we used to fill Mr. Smith's seat and kind of worked it out into words and then added some dates to it. And so we're going to bring this to you tonight. This is just a recommendation. We can amend and change this if you'd like. But essentially, if you approve, we would announce that vacancy tomorrow morning with the help of Stan. We would need to do some formatting and some things to get this information out to the press. And so as we release that in the morning, then what we are asking for is that candidates should present a letter of interest. One thing I took the liberty of adding that we thought was a good idea was 3 letters of recommendation. That was something we saw in the process of the last one that we thought was a good idea. We would request that that letter of interest and 3 letters of recommendation be forwarded to the clerk of the board by January 24th, 2020. At the February 6th, our regular board meeting, we would review those documents submitted by each candidate and vote to issue invitations to who the board would wish to interview. On February 17th, which is the time of our normal work session, we would actually have a specially called meeting for the purpose of interviewing those candidates and for voting to fill that unexpired term if we so choose that those candidates are right for what we're looking for. One thing we want to make sure we do is that we want to find the most suitable candidate, and so this process could go on. We would leave it open so that until that suitable candidate is found, we would continue the process. Saying that we found the suitable candidate, we voted on that at February 17th, that person would take their seat March 2nd. So I bring this to you as a recommendation. Obviously, we would need a motion from the floor, and if you want, Mr. Yu.
The only thing I'd like to add, since they don't have an application written on, is that they submit something showing proof of address that they actually live in the district. All right.
Any other recommendations?
The last time we asked the candidates to provide, I think it was voluntary, but I think they really did, resumes of their work experience. I found that extremely helpful, and I would like to, in addition to 3 letters, that there be some explanation of their work experience, or perhaps why they want to be on the board. Something to give us a little bit of something to consider before we start interviewing.
So would that be in addition to the letter of interest, or?
On the letter of interest, it did not specifically say to provide any type of a resume. So I'm asking, I mean, it'd be nice to know if we have a former teacher, retired teacher, if we have a business person that has a lot of experience in finance. I mean, I think those things would be things that would help us prepare questions and kind of plumb that a little bit to see.
Any other recommendations?
One thing I'd throw out is that I think it might be good for the candidates to get some information about this board, how the board operates, the number of meetings involved, and things that people wouldn't think about that may affect whether or not they have the time. So something of that nature, just to let people know what this job really is.
Okay. How would you suggest we do that?
I think, and actually we ought to maybe ask Board Member Aldred to speak, because she went through this process. I would say just a one-page whatever. Here are the duties and recommendation, or whatever. What's your reaction?
I think that would be a great idea. I know we were given a notebook that had meeting dates and things like that we needed to be aware of when we applied for this seat. But I think that would be a great idea to go into a little bit more detail about how the board operates, because I'm still learning as I go, and I think it would be good for a new person to already have that down.
And I think it's a great idea. I think also I would maybe try to add a little bit of what's expected of a board member as far as time commitments and not just the meetings we have, but
Right.
I mean, there's a lot more time we really need to put in, than just going to meetings.
School Boards Association on their website has a pretty good one-page
Good.
that talks about the responsibilities, the time commitment, the duties. Because you're right, I had a conversation with somebody, and once they looked at that, they decided against it.
Yeah.
So, Stan, can you tell us what would be the best way? Would that be after they apply? Because obviously we don't want to take out a full page ad.
Well, I could say maybe put a hyperlink in there to that document. Let me look and see. I can try to craft a way.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Where interested candidates could contact Ms. Petaway or me to retrieve that information. We can make that work.
Other recommendations? Okay. So as it stands is using this process with the addition of a resume, a proof of address, and that Dr. Winborn would work on how we could disseminate the information. Yeah. How to disseminate that information, and we're being clear that we are keeping this open until the board finds a suitable candidate. That way we make sure that we find the right person. If you agree to that, if we can have a motion to that effect?
Real quick, Mr. Chair, so just, I think that's a good point you brought up. If I understand you correctly, what you're saying is if we got, say, 2 applicants, and we interviewed them, and we did not feel that, for whatever reason, that they were appropriate to be on the board because of some extreme viewpoints or whatever. So what you're saying is that we are going to position ourselves legally and whatever, that we could say no. I think it's important.
We would make that decision the 17th if we needed to start the process again.
Motion to do what our board chair recommends.
Okay. Motion by Dr. Houlihan, and second by Mr. Peace. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, thank you. Dr. Winborn, thank you for taking care of that.
Yes, sir.
All right. Next, we move to the policy section, and we would like to welcome Mr. Dale Smith for our annual audit. Ms. Day, you want to introduce him?
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. So, from our audit firm of Anderson, Smith & White, we have Dale Smith, who is a partner with that firm, who conducted our audit for the year ended June 30th, 2019.
Good evening, everyone. All of you are doing well. Congratulations, Mr. Peace. That's 30 years of very impressive and admirable achievement. What I'd like to do this evening is start out by giving you a brief summary of our audit results and go over the letters that are included in the report quickly. Our audit is basically separated into 2 sections. We perform an audit of the actual finances of the school district, which includes the amounts that you see in the report. And then we also perform an audit of the school district's compliance with various state and federal laws and regulations that primarily relates to the state and federal grant funding that the district receives. And within the report we've issued, there are a total of 4 audit letters that relate to these 2 audit sections. And on page 1 of the report is our financial statement opinion letter. And it is a clean, unmodified opinion. And this simply means that we feel the numbers presented in the report are reliable and that financial statements are free from any sort of material misstatement. And starting on pages 58 through 63 of the report, you can turn to them if you want to. I was just going to kind of go over them quickly. I'll wait until you bring them up.
Board members, you have the summary in your folder.
Yeah, we are going to be going over that summary in more detail. But the letters that start back on page 58, there are 3 letters that we issue relating to the compliance testing portion of the audit, and all 3 of those letters are also clean, unmodified reports, which means there were no internal control weaknesses, no findings, and no question costs reflected in any of those letters. So basically, these letters let you know that we noted no improper use of grant funds, and that we feel the district's finances appear to have been expended in accordance with the budgets that were adopted by the Board of Education. And collectively, these 4 letters are the cleanest reports that a governmental entity can receive in an audit of its financial statements.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think the state deserves a round of applause.
Now, if everyone would, y'all got a 4-page little handout, I think, that was included in your packet for tonight that we're going to go over. It's got 3 years worth of data on that front page. And these are just the highlights out of the report from the areas that that I feel like are the most relevant to y'all. And the first page says general fund up at the top. I'll give y'all a minute to find those. Is everyone got them?
It looks like this, board members. It's in your folder. It's also $4.
This first page gives a summary of your general fund as of June 30th, 2019. And up at the top, you've got the balance sheet of the general fund. And looking at the June 30th, 2019 column, the district had cash and cash equivalents of $7,824,667. And total assets were $7,862,294. And liabilities were $1,632,724. If you take your total assets minus your liabilities, that gives you your ending fund balance at June 30th, 2019, which is the $6,229,570, that double underlined amount. And that amount is comprised of those three numbers you see above there. You had a small amount that's restricted for accounts receivable of $37,627. You've got an amount that is assigned of $257,516, and that is the amount that has been budgeted to balance your current 2019-20 year budget. And then you've got an unassigned fund balance of $5,934,427. And your fund balance and cash reserves appear to be at adequate levels as of June 30th, 2019. However, I did want to point out that the district did spend down another $728,000 of its fund balance during the 2018-19 year. So if you look at the bottom line here, you see a net change in fund balance. And you can see the negative $728,292. And over the past 3 years, the district has spent down a total of over $1.7 million of its fund balance. And if you go back even one more year that's not shown on here, the district spent down another about $1.1 million of fund balance in that previous year. So the 4-year total of fund balance that's been expended is about $2.8 million. For the current year, like I mentioned earlier, it looks like the use of fund balance is budgeted to decrease significantly, with only $258,000 budgeted for the current year, which is good to see. But we do recommend trying to balance future budgets without the use of fund balance, if at all possible. Did anyone have any questions regarding fund balance?
Mr. Smith, how does our fund balance compare to the overall budget of Granville County Schools? I know there's a percentage it is with local. What does it look like for the whole budget?
Well, if you look at, and there's a line up here right in the middle. It says unassigned fund balance as a percentage of total governmental expenditures. And y'all were at 7.26%. So, and there's not a minimum or maximum out there for LEAs in the state. The state does not set that for school districts, but for municipalities, counties, towns, cities, the state does require that they maintain a minimum of 8%. So if they were to go below 8%, then the LGC would be sending them a letter wanting to know what is your plan for getting your fund balance built back up to what they feel like is an acceptable level. So, y'all are right at, slightly below that 8% mark, but again, there's not a requirement for LEAs, but, we generally, that's what we typically mention to districts is the 8% level.
The debt service, when you compare this year to, or whatever the last previous to, that's a huge difference. Does that mean that we're close to paying off whatever our debt is?
There was some debt for, I think it was laptops, is that correct?
Oh, okay.
That's right.
And I think those got paid. Y'all made the final installment on those during the June 3018 year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, go to the second page. We'll look at school food service program. And on this page, we'll be focusing on the bottom line, which is the net income or loss for the year. And if you read across that bottom line, you can see that the program has been operating profitably for the past 3 years. Reported a profit of $14,669 in 2019, compared to a profit of $92,726 in 2018 and $295,000 in 2017. Now there was no indirect cost paid in 2017, whereas $49,000 of indirect costs was paid in 2018 and $82,000 was paid in 2019. And it's good to see that the indirect cost amount is steadily going up. And indirect costs is monies paid by the Child Nutrition Program to cover utilities and maintenance type costs for their operation out in the individual schools. Cash in this program has steadily increased over the past 3 years, going up from $942,000 in 2017 to about $1.2 million at June 30th, 2019. So overall, the program appears to be operating soundly and is in good financial shape as of June 30th, 2019.
Just a quick question. If you look at the bottom line of net income, we went from 294 to 92 to 14,000. Why is that, and what does that mean?
If you look, the salaries and benefits line is the primary item that went up there. So salaries and benefits went up about $100,000 over that period. And then at the same time, revenues dropped some during that period. And what you had was, I think the district's ADM was going down over that 2-year period, so you didn't have as many kids coming through and eating. And the revenues from USDA, the federal revenue line, went down. So you had a little bit of a mixture of revenues went down and expenses went up over that period.
Should we take any warning from this trend that goes from 294,000 to 92 to 14? Are we expecting next year to be in the red?
Well, you would hope not. And another point that I made earlier was about the indirect costs. So if you look at that indirect cost paid line, you can see that there was zero paid in 2017, whereas almost $82,000 was paid in 2019. So if you add in that $82,000, if they had not paid that last year, then the net income would have been around $96,000, $97,000. Which ideally they would be able to keep paying more indirect costs. I think the actual amount that could have been paid, I don't have that number right here, but it's probably more in the range of $300,000. But the program's been trying to pay more and more each year as it builds up cash. So
that's nothing for us to worry about.
Not at this point, I wouldn't say so.
Thank you.
Any more questions? And the next page is a summary of your child care fund for the past 3 years. And looking along that bottom line again, the net income loss, you can see that the program has been steadily profitable the past 3 years. Net income stayed pretty steady, $24,000 in 2019, about $31,000 in 2017. Cash has steadily increased over the past 3 years from $418,000 to $462,000. I think overall the program appears to be in good financial shape as of June 30th. Any questions on this page? And the last page is a summary of the findings and question costs reported in our audit for the past 3 years. And over the past 3 years, the district has not had any major compliance issues reported. One finding in 2018 was properly addressed in 2019. And there is a section in the bound audit report that deals with that, and it is shown as corrected in the June 30th, 2019 report. And there are a lot of various compliance steps we're required to test as part of our audit. We select a lot of payroll expenditures, general expenditures, and state and federal governments. They impose a lot of restrictions on the monies y'all receive. And so all of your directors and the finance department, they're responsible for ensuring those funds get spent in accordance with all those requirements. And they did an excellent job of spending those funds the way they were supposed to be. And I think it says a lot about the folks y'all have in charge that there are no findings in the current year audit. And that was pretty much all I had planned to cover, unless someone had a question.
Very good. Any further questions? Mr. Smith, thank you so much for you and your firm. I know Beth appreciates being able to present this audit tonight, and we thank you for your work in that.
We appreciate her and her staff. They really do a great job. We audit over 50 districts across the state, and I can tell you that there's not anybody doing as great of a job as y'all are here. Y'all got a top-notch finance department.
Where's the newspaper raffle?
We needed them tonight.
Believe me, I don't get to say that everywhere I go.
Well, thank you for saying
Thank
it.
y'all.
Do you do Johnston County?
Johnson County, not me personally.
I couldn't help myself.
Y'all have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right. Now, we had adjusted our agenda to go into closed session now to discuss some matters. So I'll take a motion for that effect. Y'all give Mr. Udy a chance, he has a job.
Adjourn to closed session in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 143, 318.11A6, 143, 318.11A3, 143, 318.11A5, and Section 115C, 321 for personnel and attorney-client privilege.
All right. So you've heard the motion. Do I have a second? All right. Motion and a second by Mr. Peace. All those in favor say aye.
Bye.
All those opposed? All right. So we'll go into, all right. Take a motion to approve the certified personnel exhibits that you were presented. Motion by Mr. Udy and a second by Mr. Rivers. All those, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Bye.
All those opposed? Take a motion to approve the classified personnel report as presented.
So moved.
All right, so a motion by Mr. Peace and a second by Mr. Udy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Next on our agenda is the Mary Potter name change update. Dr. McClain?
Yes, this will take just a second because tons of work has been done by our Mary Potter design team, led by Mr. Pease and Dr. Myron.
Mr. Peace, would you like to run through it, or? Can you do it in 30 seconds? I can do it in 30 seconds. If you would just go to the last slide, and we can come back later to talk about the process that we went through. You just continue to scroll down to the last slide. After survey was open for about 2.5 months, and the name that bubbled to the top from the surveys was the Mary Potter Center of Education. And so we met as a committee on Friday. The team felt really good about that name and felt confident for Mr. Peace to bring it to the board for discussion. And as I said, we can talk about the process a little further at the next meeting or at the work session. But I will say that it was in the local paper as well as it was sent out to Mary Potter alumni, Mary Potter High School.
Smart.
So this does come to us as a action item?
Yes, it does. If any board members have any questions, I'm probably going to have certainly try to answer them. And if not, I'm going to make a motion that the board approve the name that Dr. Myron, excuse me, that represent the Mary Potter Center of Education.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Peace and a second by Mr. Udy. For the name change to be changed to the Mary Potter Center for Education? Center of Education, sorry. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, that's exciting news.
Exciting.
Exciting.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, one thing I'd like to do, I'd like to recommend that we take a motion to continue our agenda at a later meeting so that we can adjourn to move to the county commissioners meeting because we are slated to be there at a certain time. If the board chooses that be a motion to accept, I'll entertain a motion for that.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Udy, a second for that?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, so we will continue our agenda at a later date. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, so that moves us to the end of our evening. You see there are some dates there to remember on your board docs. Again, we will be adjourning to go to the county commissioners, and our next meeting is January 21st for a work session. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Second for that?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, we are